The U.S. Supreme Court upholding a judge's order that could force the Trump administration to resume foreign aid payments. A lot of this has to do with USAID, and Shannon Bream is on that. Shannon, what happened?
Okay, so this is one of the very first things from this term to make it fully to some kind of decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. And this is about foreign aid that was ordered to be paid out by a lower court judge. There were groups who take in USAID money, and they had gone and said, listen, this freeze is harming us. And they went to the district court judge, that lower court level, and he said, yes, the government has to pay this out. It went through the appeals, got to the Supreme Court. They, by a 5-4 vote today, say they won't put that judge's order on hold. But they've told that lower court, now you need to explain to the Trump administration exactly what money you want them to pay out. The dissenters, led by Justice Alito, also with Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, which means that Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett did side with the Democrat appointees on the court. They've said they're dissenting. And let me read you a little bit of this. They say the court makes a most unfortunate misstep that rewards an act of judicial hubris and imposes a $2 billion penalty on American taxpayers. They say the relief that's been ordered to pay this money out is an extreme response. It says a federal court has many tools to address a party's supposed malfeasance. Self-aggrandizement of its jurisdiction is not one of them. In plain English, they think the lower court got it wrong and was way out of bounds to order this money paid out. They say it's going to be to the harm of the American taxpayer. They've now said to that lower court, explain to the Trump administration exactly what they have to do. But the order stands. The money's got to go out.
Shannon, how big of a surprise is this? How do you find it?
Listen, anytime it's a 5-4, you can't be sure exactly. You know, it was a close decision. One vote flips either Roberts or Barrett the other way, and this is a different decision. So we knew they were wrestling with it, and the fact that this lengthy dissent has been written, led by Justice Alito, means the court really struggled with it. But it is a loss for the Trump administration. Of the nearly 100 cases now pending, there's some other stuff we're waiting for from the Supreme Court level as well.
Okay, my guess is it's not the end of this, but we shall see in time. Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, thank you for popping on the air. Appreciate that. Shannon Bream there in D.C.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got to talk about a story that, quite honestly, is bad news, okay? And it's really annoying, and it really pisses me off because we have the presidency, okay? We have Congress, the House and the Senate, and we supposedly have the Supreme Court, but it seems as if we may not have the Supreme Court, although, at least on paper, there are 6 conservatives and 3 liberals. But it seems as if we may actually have 5 liberals and 4 conservatives, right? That is the real number on the Supreme Court, so it seems, because thanks to Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts, who we already knew John Roberts was a liberal, but Amy Coney Barrett, she has decided to side with the liberals plus John Roberts on their ruling that basically allows a district court judge to stop the president from blocking USAID funds, okay, because President Trump had decided to stop the funding for USAID. Okay, we're not giving out any more foreign aid. And Amy Coney Barrett, again, decided that, hey, you know what? Yeah, a district judge can definitely stop President Trump from doing that. And why am I emphasizing that? Well, because this case wasn't ruled on the merits, okay? This is not about whether or not the president can actually do that after funds have been appropriated by Congress. That's actually not what it's about, okay? It's not about the merits. It's simply about whether or not a district judge can stop the president from freezing the funds right now. And essentially, the Supreme Court, again, along with Amy Coney Barrett, ruled that, the district judge should be able to have that power. Take a look.
And we begin with breaking news from the nation's highest court. In a 5-4 ruling, the Supreme Court has rejected the Trump administration's request to keep foreign aid frozen. The billions of dollars in aid had been approved by Congress.
Here with us to break all of this down, it's very, very significant. CNN's chief legal affairs correspondent Paula Reed. This was an incredibly fast decision by the U.S. Supreme Court.
It was, and it's rare that the Supreme Court drops a decision on us at 9 o'clock in the morning. And look, this decision was pretty technical, but it really reveals a lot about the divides within the court itself. This is the second time that Trump's efforts to reshape the federal government have gone up to the high court. And here specifically, the Trump administration was asking the court to keep foreign aid frozen. But the court declined to do that. They actually sent that whole issue back down to the lower court to decide if those funds need to be released. Now, this is the second time that the Supreme Court has declined to intervene on Trump's behalf. But I want to note the larger questions about what Trump can and cannot do with DOGE, with this kind of foreign aid. Those questions have not been answered. The Supreme Court has not weighed in on what we call the merits or the larger constitutional questions. That's going to take some time. But again, twice they've asked the Supreme Court to help them out, and twice they have declined.
And basically, correct me if I'm wrong, the House of Representatives and the Senate both passed authorizing legislation for these billions of dollars in foreign aid. Then they passed separate appropriations bills, and then the president signed both bills into law. The Supreme Court saying if you want to change that, there's got to be additional legislation and more action by the president.
So I think eventually the Supreme Court will have to get at that issue. Right now, the issue they're deciding is really whether a district court judge can compel the administration to pay these billions of dollars in foreign aid that they're saying they don't want to. So
the other side of it, the Trump administration and the dissenters in this case argue, first of all, the district court judge had no power to do what he did, that he overstepped. Second of all, that the way this case was brought by private businesses was procedurally improper. And third, the dissenting conservative justices argue what we, the Supreme Court, should have done is put this whole thing on hold so that we could have the full rounds of briefing and argument that we'd ordinarily have. And as the dissent correctly notes, the practical impact of this is that $2 billion is almost certainly going to get out the door and nobody can stop it at this point.
When can that happen? That's what I'm trying to get at, just sort of the direct impact from this.
Yeah.
Yes, they're sending it back to the lower court, but what does it mean for that aid that's frozen right now?
So, as Paula said, the Supreme Court has now sent this case back to the district court, the trial level court. And this is the same judge who previously ordered the federal government, you cannot block this. You need to get it out the door. He gave him something like 36 hours to get it out the door. Well, now the Supreme Court has said back to the district court. Yes, district court judge, you do have jurisdiction and authority to order that this money be paid. And you need to work with the parties to get this money out the door in a way that's quick, but also feasible, not impossible from a technical point of view.
Yeah, so as you guys should have picked up on by now, the conservative justices are pissed, okay? The dissenters, they're like, what the hell, right? Why is it that you're allowing some lower court judge to basically stop the president from freezing the funds, right? He should not have the ability to do that as a lower court judge, okay? We actually just need to hear the case and to rule on the merits, right? Let's stop everything and actually sit down and hash this out, right? Hash out the constitutionality of all of this, okay? But no. They allowed this woke judge to just do whatever you want, right? Basically, they made him king, right? They made him more powerful than the president. So again, I understand why the conservative justices are pissed, okay? And Amy Coney Barrett is getting a whole lot of backlash over this because at this point, it seems as if she's a traitor. I think it is about time to admit the truth about Amy Coney Barrett, which is that she was DEI, okay? This is one of these times where, you know what? Hey, who knows? Maybe the liberals will own to something when they talked about how much DEI benefits liberal white women, right? Because it seems as if Amy Coney Barrett may be in that category here, okay? Just based off her rulings and the things that she's been doing lately. I don't think she was a good pick by President Trump. But then again, she was probably Mitch McConnell's pick, okay? Because in Trump's first term, he relied a lot on the neocons. He relied a lot on the Mitch McConnells to guide him and to say, hey, this is the right choice. Amy Coney Barrett at this point seems to be the wrong choice, and she's showing that over and over and over again, okay? And, I'm just saying, it seems as if she, in fact, was DEI. But let's go ahead and get into this, okay, the backlash that she is getting over this very, very, very silly ruling that she sided with.
All right, live look right now over at the Supreme Court. Or a look. Some backlash from conservatives today over today's recent decision rejecting the Trump administration's effort to keep $2 billion worth of foreign aid frozen. The focus of the anger for some, Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She was sworn in 2020 after being picked by President Trump in his first term. Both she and Chief Justice Roberts sided with the liberal justices in a 5-4 decision. News Nation legal contributor Jesse Weber joins us now. All right, Jesse, I'm going to get to ACB, as she's known, here in a second, and why there's some backlash for her. But what about the decision today? What did the court decide, and how is this a setback for the Trump White House?
It's a major setback. They ruled against the government. They ruled against the Trump administration because they refused to lift a lower court judge's order that prohibited the federal government from suspending foreign aid. And we're talking about money that now has to conceivably be paid out, $2 billion in reimbursements for work that had already been done. And the Supreme Court instructed the lower court, who issued this order, they now have to give guidance to the federal government about how exactly and when exactly they're going to pay out this money. So it's a big loss to the...
Insane to think about, right? Absolutely insane. Again, it's almost as if they've just made the judicial branch more powerful than all the other branches. That's kind of what it seems like at this point, okay? That's what it seems like. They've given more power to the judicial branch than the executive branch. That's what's happening. When you want to talk about checks and balances, you want to talk about the balances of power, it seems to me that the judicial branch, particularly these liberal judges, they really are getting a little bit too big for their britches. I'm just saying, right? That's essentially what's happening here.
The Trump administration.
So Amy Coney Barrett went against Gorsuch, went against Kavanaugh, the two other Trump picks in the first term. It's not the first time that's happened recently. There was an image last night at the State of the Union address where Trump kind of casually went by her. They had to look at each other. And there's some furor on the right for Amy Coney Barrett. Is it deserved?
Absolutely.
Here's the problem. The majority, including Amy Coney Barrett, didn't give a reason why they did this. So this leads people to speculate, was this based on the law? Was this based on a hatred or an anti-Donald Trump perspective, something the government's doing? Look, the argument could be that when you look at the dissent from the conservative justices, they make really good arguments. Their arguments were, A, does a lower court judge have the power to compel the federal government to pay out $2 billion? Talk about the harm to the federal government and the taxpayers. That's $2 billion they are not going to be able to recover. Why not just pause this? Why not just pause everything, allow Donald Trump's administration to brief this, to argue this on the merits, and decide it at a different day? Now, she could have gone that way. She chose not to. And we don't really know what persuaded her and the other justices to go and actually say that the federal government has to pay out this money to uphold the lower court's order. And that's the issue. It could have been maybe it was something on the merits. Maybe it had to do with the fact there was an argument presented that the Donald Trump's administration, the federal government, actually was fighting the wrong order from the judge. We don't know. And because we don't know, that is what leads people to speculate. And obviously, she is getting a lot of backlash for it.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jesse Weber, News.
Yeah, as she should. So basically what has to happen is this, okay, at least as of right now, because this stuff is going to take time to work its way back up to the Supreme Court so that they can actually rule on the merits, okay, and we'll see at that point what Amy Coney Barrett actually really thinks. But until then, it seems as if the GOP, the congressmen, are telling Elon Musk that, hey, when it comes to DOGE, in order for these cuts to be permanent, we're going to have to vote on it, right? We already talked about this before because of the Impoundment Control Act, which was passed by Congress in order to reel in Richard Nixon, who basically tried to do the same thing that Trump was doing, right? To basically say, hey, you know what? We're not going to use these funds that Congress had allocated because I want to reduce spending and to lower inflation, right? And Congress said, no, we don't like that. They passed that legislation in order to prevent the president from doing that. Basically, the GOP is saying, hey, we have to go through a process in order for these cuts to actually be permanent.
We do have some breaking news that involves Elon Musk, DOGE, and federal spending cuts. Emily Wilkins, what's going on?
Hey, Brian. So Elon Musk just got done with about 2-hour meeting with Republican senators. And one of their main messages to him is that while they appreciate everything he is doing with cutting waste and spending in the U.S. government, that the senators Congress will need to go ahead and sign off on those spending cuts. And they discussed a process actually known as rescission, where the White House basically sends the Congress a request and says, hey, we want you to claw back this funding. And then the Senate and the House would have 45 45 days to go ahead and either approve or deny the White House request. So that was something that was discussed. It seems like a lot of senators are on board with this. Senator Lindsey Graham told me as he was coming out of the room that there's momentum right now and that Congress needs to capitalize on it. And he said that Elon Musk was on board as well. It's been very interesting seeing, of course, the cuts that DOGE has been bringing about and wondering exactly what Congress's role here. Obviously, they are the ones constitutionally who have the power of the purse. And it looks like now senators are stepping up and saying, hey, all these cuts are fine, but they're not finalized until we vote on them. And then, of course, that is a question. Once senators actually have to vote on eliminating some of these programs, what are actually going to be the lines to do so? Are there going to be some Republicans who are hesitant to eliminate certain programs that Musk has?
Once again, the executive branch learns the hard way that Congress controls the power of the purse, and they will remind anybody who gets their way that they, not the president, is the one in charge of spending. Emily Wilkins.
Yeah, so the good news is this, right? There's good news, there's bad news. Okay, the bad news is that we have to rely on Republicans in order to do something that they failed to do for years, which is why we have to do this, right? If the Paul Ryan Republicans actually lived up to what they claim that they believe in, right, which is fiscal responsibility, we wouldn't have to do this. But because they haven't lived up to it, because they are cowards when it comes to these cuts and doing what has to be done in order to rein in this bloated government and this out of control deficit, this is why we're in this situation. Okay, so now we have to go back to the same people who don't have the cojones to actually do this stuff, right? You're already seeing some of these GOP congressmen and senators, you're already seeing them kind of fold a little bit, right? Kind of grimace. Like, the Democrats are complaining about the firings. Right? You're already seeing a little bit of that. So going back to them and having them do something that they've refused to do for years, again, is not good. But the good news is that, hey, it only requires 51 votes, right? They don't actually need the Democrats in order to do it. That's the good thing. So the ball is in their court, okay? So I think what's going to end up happening is that you're going to have DOGE basically evaluate what needs to be cut, and then Congress is going to have to approve it, right? They're going to have to go through it and say, okay, we approve of it, we don't approve of it, and go from there, okay? And a lot of people say, well, this is the right way to do it, and it could be the right way to do it. My issue is that I'm not confident that the GOP actually has the cojones to do it, okay? So with that being said, let's read a little bit more about this meeting that the Republicans had with Elon Musk. Republican senators told tech billionaire Elon Musk at a closed-door meeting Wednesday that his aggressive moves to shrink the federal government will need a vote on Capitol Hill, sending a clear message that he needs to respect Congress's power of the purse. Musk met with Republican senators at a luncheon to give them an overview of his Department of Government Efficiency team's work to root out waste, fraud, and abuse across an array of federal programs. Senator Rand Paul, who largely supports Musk's mission, told him DOGE's efforts to cut spending and reduce the federal workforce reductions won't pass muster with the courts unless Congress codifies them by passing a spending rescission package. Quote, to make it real, to make it go beyond the moment of the day, it needs to come back in the form of a rescission package, Paul said after the meeting, pointing to the 5-4 decision by the Supreme Court on Wednesday morning, rejecting the Trump administration's argument that billions of dollars in foreign aid should remain frozen. Quote, I love all the stuff they're doing, but we got to vote on it. My message to Elon was, quote, let's get over the empowerment idea and let's send it back as a rescission package, he said. Quote, then what we have to do is to get 51 senators or 50 senators to vote to cut the spending. He added, we talked about a lot. How do we make these things permanent? Rescission was a big part of the discussion. Paul and other Republican senators said Musk appeared open to the idea, but didn't seem to expect DOGE's cuts and workforce reductions would need to come back to Congress for ultimate approval. Senate Budget Committee Chair Lindsey Graham said there's broad desire within the Senate GOP conference for a vote on DOGE's recommended cuts. Quote, yes, 100%, we should be doing it. Like yesterday, Graham said, you could do regulatory reform without us, but anything that doesn't fit within budget reconciliation has to be done through rescissions, he explained. Graham and other Republican lawmakers said Musk's proposed cuts cannot be codified through the special budget reconciliation package they plan to move to address border security, energy reform, and tax reform. Okay, so basically what he's saying is that, well, they're going to have to do it basically at another time, right? It's probably going to take another reconciliation package, which means that it's probably not going to happen for a while, right? That is my interpretation of what Lindsey Graham and other Republican lawmakers said. Again, this is very disappointing because, again, I just don't have faith in the GOP, like actual cookie cutter Republican politicians to do anything, right? Because, again, they haven't done anything before in the past, okay? And expecting them to do something now, I don't know. Maybe they will because Elon Musk is involved, because there's an appetite for it from the base. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, this is definitely a setback, and we will see. But, again, the ball's in the court of the lawmakers at this point. I'm not entirely sure what else DOGE can't do, right, at this point. We don't really know. All this stuff has been worked out throughout the courts. But, yeah, this ruling right here definitely is not great, okay? And, Amy Coney Barrett is getting a lot of backlash. I mean, I think John Roberts should get some backlash too. But I'm pretty sure he, sides with liberals to make it appear as if the court is, balanced, okay? I think that's what he does, okay? And Amy Coney Barrett is actually, the real swing vote here. And she decided to swing in direction of the liberals, and we don't have an explanation for it. And that's what makes it extremely frustrating, because you may not agree with the president or DOGE on the merits, but at the same time, this is not about the merits. This is about some random district judge being able to essentially stop the federal government from freezing this $2 billion, which, again, I think that's way too much power for, one district judge to have. But apparently Amy Coney Barrett doesn't think so, right? I believe that she has a mild case of Trump derangement. That is my gut feeling. But again, we will see exactly what happens moving forward. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.